Hello, I'm presenter Dawon Lee from KAIST. I present a paper titled User Performance in Consecutive Temporal Pointing on Exploratory Study. This work was done in collaboration with Sunjun Kim, Junyong and Byungjoo. Our study focuses on consecutive temporal pointing on extension of research on temporal pointing. To provide context, I will begin by giving a brief overview of temporal pointing first, and then take a closer look at our topic, consecutive temporal pointing. In human-computer interaction, there are many tasks that require users to respond to a specific timing. In this task, users should wait for the time to elapse and then respond when the time reaches the target timing. These tasks are called temporal pointing, and the concept was first proposed by Lee et al. In KAIST 16 paper. Temporal pointing examples can be found in many interaction cases. For example, in many video games, when the obstacles approach closely to the user has to press the button. After several trials of the task were performed, the user's input generally follows a Gaussian distribution with mean mu and spread sigma. Mu indicates input accuracy. Mu of 0 means the user accurately responded to the target, and negative mu means that the input was made earlier than the target, and positive mu means the input was made late. The spread sigma represents input precision, with smaller values suggesting more precise inputs. There are scientific models that can predict this input precision sigma in temporal pointing tests. Various factors may affect sigma, but the most representative factor of the model is time to target. According to the model, as the time to target increases, sigma decreases, indicating higher precision. On the other hand, a model that predicts mu does not exist yet. This was the overview of temporal pointing as a background for our research. Wherein in SIGCHI, users also often need to respond to two consecutive timing targets. Users may press the button twice in succession, or users may need to press the button at the first target timing and then release the button held at the second target timing. We define this task as consecutive temporal pointing, CTP. There are many examples of it. To activate the double-click function, users have to quickly press the left button of a mouse twice, typically within 500 milliseconds. Otherwise, the input is treated as the user's single input, so users may fail to get the function. We can find examples also in video games. To capture the long notes in rhythm games, the users must press the button when the long note first touches the target bar, and release the button when the long note leaves the bar. Also, in the case of the charged attacks in many shooting games, the amount of attack damage is determined depending on how much time has elapsed between the button press and release. Where these tasks are widely utilized in many interactions, there is currently no model to predict user performance in CTP. Even the empirical understanding in this context has barely been touched upon. In response to this problem, in this paper, we aim to broadly explore user performance in CTP. Let's take a closer look at the CTP task. As in the practice of the temporal pointing, the task variables of CTP can be defined with these two components on the time axis: time to target TTF and time to second target TTS. Also, we can expect each input distribution to follow a Gaussian distribution, and we can consider mu of each distribution as input accuracy and sigma as input precision. According to the patterns in which temporal requirements from the system are given, CTP can be classified into two types. CTP type 1 refers to cases in which the system imposes temporal requirements only on the second target, so users can decide the timing of their first input. Users only need to perform the second input when TTS time has elapsed from their first input. Examples include activating the double-clicking function and executing charge attacks. CTP type 2 is a case where both time requirements of TTF and TTS must be satisfied. Examples include capturing long notes in rhythm games. So far, it was the overview of CTP task. From the background, we can pose two research questions on CTP. The first question is whether CTP can be considered as just two separate temporal pointing processes. If so, the existing temporal pointing models can be applied as they are. We can expect to see trends that sigma decreases as the time to target increases. And the second question is what factors affect user performance in CTP? To explore potential factors, we can test the known factors from temporal pointing. To answer the research questions, we conducted a user study. The study covers 3 variations of the CTP test. Variation 1 covers CTP type 1 and variation 2 covers CTP type 2. Variation 3 is designed for the bimanual input where the 2 inputs of CTP were pressed with both left and right hands. And variation 3 also covers both CTP type 1 and 2. I will show you experimental videos for each variation.
In first variation, temporal constraints were given only to the second button input. Users could freely determine the timing of the first button input. In second variation, temporal constraints were given to both button inputs. In third variation, users performed the first and second button inputs using both hands.
Across all the variations, we tested the following factors as independent variables. The variables and their testing levels were designed with reference to previous temporal pointing papers. I will briefly explain each factor. As previously mentioned, we consider the task variables of TTF and TTS. An input period refers to the repetition period in which the user must perform the task, and it has 2 levels. User copresence is a variable that determines whether the process of reaching target is feasible and has 2 levels, on or off. Input method is a variable that determines which activation point each of the 2 inputs has. It has 2 levels, press or press release. In press condition, both inputs are activated through the key pressed callback function, while in press release condition, the second input is changed to use the key release function. Lastly, input order is tested in bimanual mode, variation 3. It indicates the order in which 2 inputs are performed alternately with both hands and has 2 levels, dominant hand to non-dominant hand, or non-dominant hand to dominant hand. As a result, 3 different variations of the user study were conducted, each with different participants and a different design. Across all the variations, 100 participants were recruited, and the performance of each first and second input was quantified as input accuracy mu and precision sigma. For detailed experimental design and settings, please see our paper. Based on our analysis, the answer to the first question is no. It seems that CTP has a unique input process distinct from temporal pointing. This is the decreasing trend of sigma from the temporal pointing model. We expected to see this trend in both the first and second inputs of CTP. In the first input of CTP, as you can see, sigma shows a similar decreasing trend to temporal pointing. We also performed model fitting on this data to the temporal pointing model, and the fitting was successful with a high R-square value of 0.93. However, for the second input data, sigma exhibits different trends where it does not decrease as the time to target increases, making even the fitting impossible. Based on these results, we conclude that CTP has a unique input process distinct from temporal pointing. And I will introduce interesting design factors of CTP. We confirmed that the second input showed a significantly lower sigma with up to 21% higher precision when performed with the press method. Because the first input for both methods was identically performed with the key pressed, no significant difference was found in them as expected. However, it seems that the key press method does not always lead better performance, because press requires moving the finger in 3 steps down, up, down, while press release requires only 2 steps down and up. Due to the minimum time required for this additional motor execution in press method, input delays were observed when TTS was less than 150 milliseconds. This implies that the minimum time threshold between two timing targets should be set as higher than 150 milliseconds in press condition. This input delay disappeared in the bimanual condition where the motor limit was not critical. Lastly, we found that the effects of input order were not significant in performance. This contradicts previous studies suggesting that dominant limb or hand offers advantages in speed and timing consistency in rhythmic tasks. We attribute this difference to the nature of the CTP task, which involves shorter input intervals compared to typical rhythmic tasks. Here concludes the report on interesting factors and their impact. Please refer to the paper for the impacts of the other factors. In conclusion, first, we define CTP task and establish its taxonomy. Next, we confirm that CTP has a unique input process distinct from temporal pointing. Lastly, we presented important design factors for CTP performance. Thanks for watching.